So I am sitting here in my office at Remax Kelowna, and I'm chatting it up today with Chris Patton. Chris works as a performance coach, an inspirational speaker, an author, and a heart math trainer here in Kelowna. And we're going to talk about all of that. Chris helped me last year with some really fantastic personal coaching, which I really benefited from. We are in a monthly mastermind group together and a weekly breakfast group. So I've seen Chris's work firsthand, and I've gotten to know her pretty well so far. But like any great friendship, it's something that gets better and deeper with the passage of time. And because I admire Chris and her work so much, I am excited to get to know her even better. So first of all, Chris, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I know you're an extremely busy woman, and I really appreciate your time. So I want to give you a platform to tell us about your work and about your fascinating life. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and how long you've been a performance coach, inspirational speaker, and an author. And I also want to talk about heart math and what that is all about and what got you into that.
Thanks, Luke. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Honestly, I'm touched that you would ask me, and I'm just thrilled to talk about my life, I think. You know those times you look back in your life, and there's truth to that saying, right? Hindsight's 20/20. And you start to see patterns that you've behaved in or the way that you've been in the past, and you really get a bigger picture of who you are and what you're bringing to the future, and it's all just very interesting. I think more people should have this opportunity. I think, honestly, if everyone had the opportunity to be asked to look back over their life and the choices they made and the kind of questions you've asked me today, or are going to ask me, we'd learn a lot about ourselves. Yeah. So I think this is a really valuable exercise. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I always love sitting with you and talking. As you know from last year, our coaching sessions, I'm not going to lie, you were my best client. I looked forward to every time we got together. And normally a coaching session for me is like an hour and a half. And that's usually the time that it's enough. You know, it's enough and you're tired after that. But you and we would go for 2 hours plus, and we would find all kinds of interesting things to talk about. And I think I learned as much as you. So thank you very much for that. Talking about where I've come from in my life, it's very interesting. And I'm going to go back as far as when I was 12 years old. I was in grade 7, and we were asked to come up with what we wanted to be for the rest of our lives, or what we were what to be when we grew up.
Geographically, where is this? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So where am I from? I'm from Ontario, and I moved to Kelowna in November of 2016. When I was 12 years old, I was in grade 7 in Kitchener. I grew up in Kitchener, Waterloo, Ontario. And I lived in Windsor for a time when I was at law school. And then I came back, and I ended up living in Cambridge for almost 20 years because I raised my family there. Met my ex-husband, and we raised Alex and Scott in Cambridge. And then I moved from Cambridge to Kelowna in November of 2016. Yeah, so I'm a newbie here. I'm not a rookie. It's been about a year and a half, and this is my home. I love it here. I absolutely love it here. I feel connected here. I know the most amazing people, and I love my friends, and I love all the people that I've met. So I'm absolutely at home. You know, when I was 12, I had to come up with an idea of my life path overnight. So I took... I'm just kidding. That's how I treated it. So I did. I had always had this idea in the back of my mind that I wanted to become a lawyer. Now, it was my dad. My dad was a lawyer in Kitchener. He practiced for 30 years before he passed away. And funny thing was, he never asked me to do this or pressured me. In fact, he asked me a couple times when I was in the process if this was something I really wanted to do. In one of those incredulous, are you sure you want to do this kind of thing? So I was sure that was he that planted the seed. And so I went to school the next day, and I announced that I talked to my teacher first, and I said, I either want to be a lawyer or a singer, because, they're alike. And she said to me, Become a lawyer. You're going to make way more money. You don't make any money as a musician. And unfortunately, that's a careless thing to say to an impressionable young person, because I might have had a career as a singer. I still do sing. So anyway, I always had that as my guiding, direction or goal in my life as I went through high school and university. I chose courses that I could get good marks in to get into law school, and I did. I have a BA, which I fondly called a bugger all, from Wilfrid Laurier University, and then I went to Windsor Law from 1984 to 1987 and graduated, and it didn't take me long to see that law wasn't really the thing for me. However, given that I'd spent so long in education and so much time and money and all of that, it wasn't something I was going to throw over very quickly. So I practiced insurance defense litigation for almost 8 years. But in the meantime, I had gotten married. I had 2 small children, and I found I was married to a lawyer, and he wasn't around as much as I would have liked. And I found myself being the principal parent as well as practicing law full time. And I just couldn't do it. I thought I was going to die, and I am a cancer survivor. I had a scare back when I was 26, and so I thought, I wouldn't be any good to anybody if I continued down that path, and I really wasn't enjoying what I was doing. As I said, right from the beginning, I kind of knew this wasn't for me. I was a very sensitive, emotionally sensitive person, and I'm intuitive and all of that, and to be in that field is a little like pouring acid on your soul. That's what I felt like a lot of days. So it wasn't for me. I was grateful to stop practicing, even though that was a heavy decision to make, as I said, given what I had put into it and the goodwill and all of that I had built into my business. However, I felt that raising my 2 kids was a far more worthy pursuit of my time. And my daughter, Alexandria, is 28, and my son, Scott, is 22, and they're absolutely amazing people. They're going to be here June 26th. I'm already not sleeping because I'm so excited. We're going to have so much fun. So anyway, so I retired, but I'll tell you, I was at home with my 2 little kids, and every parent out there who's listening is going to go, yeah, I get this, for a year and a bit, and that wasn't really cool because nobody trained me for that. And nobody trains parents anyway, but I sure felt kind of out of my league there. So I went back to work part-time, and that was a really perfect solution for me because it got me out of the house and, talking to adults and being an adult, I felt. So I went back to work as a part-time deputy judge in small claims court, and I did that for 7 years. And I worked anywhere from, really 1 to 6 days a month, but I was one of them because I wasn't practicing full-time. I had more time in my hands, so I was one of them that was in there often. So I was about 5 or 6 days a month, and it was perfect. It was really perfect because I could use my brain and be professional and not have care and concern of my home or my kids, and then all the other days I was there for them. Yeah. And I loved it.
Do you have any fun stories that from your days as a judge? I mean, you must have seen some crazy stuff, right? In small claims court, most of the people don't have lawyers, right? And I'm sure you've seen some pretty hilarious or shocking things. Well,
yeah, I have many stories, and some of them are kind of long, but yeah, I felt that because people didn't have counsel, and I really took on the responsibility to help people through this process because, people are angry and or scared or both. And they don't understand the process. And there's a reason. There's a reason people become litigators. It's because there is a process to follow, and there are subtleties about how you prove your case and all of that. So I wanted to make that as transparent as possible. I felt that I was a good educator that way, and I would support people in telling me their story. And I felt like I made it very clear to them what the game was. And the game was, you got to provide me enough information that's credible that I can make a decision on your behalf. So the weird things were, you end up some days feel like you're babysitting a kindergarten class. And I think I advised my court a couple times that I was going to close down the daycare if they didn't start to behave. Right. But, the trouble is that some people are angry people, and regardless of what you say to them, they expect life to be perfect or something, and it's just, those are the people you're not going to reach. Yeah. You don't argue with. And the bottom line was, I I was the game they played. They paid to be in that court. They paid for my decision. I was not attached to the outcome either way. And I was the independent arbiter and did my best to find the best decisions that everybody could live with. And some of them were very clear, right or wrong. But the funny stories, I could regale you with a couple, but it was mostly foibles in the court system where I really wasn't protected, and things could have gotten really, really wrong. Well, okay, I'll tell you one story. It's kind of a long one, but I was called the night before I was sitting, and I was told that they were concerned about one of the plaintiffs, and they gave me a story that he was mentally ill, and he was dishonorably discharged from the Navy. He was a Navy gunner, and he'd been mailing bullets to people with their name on that had crossed him. So he had a beef with his lawyer, who apparently didn't attend to things properly in court for something he did. And anyway, they gave me the option to pass, and they were going to give it to another one of the men who were acting as deputy judges at the time. And of course I said, hell no. Is it normally pretty boring stuff, really? I felt it was. And so I went in the next day, and as I was walking down towards my courtroom with my pile of files, there was they also said, this is the most important thing, they said, don't worry, Chris, you're going to have protection all day long. We're going to have an undercover officer with you from the morning till you're finished. And then my husband at the time and my kids were like, okay, you can go and do this tomorrow. So as I'm walking towards the courtroom, there's a gentleman standing there in a suit, and as I walked up to him, I said, oh, you must be my angel, or something is dumb. And he kind of looked at me with a funny look, and he pointed, and he said, oh, are you Judge Patton? And I said, yes. And so we walked into the courtroom, and I was taking off my coat and my boots, and we're in my office, and we're just chatting about everything, chatting about the weather and kids, and he seemed really, really nice. And anyway, he sat in my office for a bit, and I finally said, well, you know what, I've got to read these files, so, you can sit outside, and I've got some work to do. And he was cool with that, and then he stuck his head in a little while later, just before court starts, and said, well, I'm going to go out for a smoke and a coffee. Do you want something? And I said, no, I'm fine. And anyway, I opened court that day, and I dealt with the smaller matters, the adjournments and so on, and I got to the trials, and as I'm watching people leave the courtroom, as the matters are dealt with, the numbers are dwindling, and I'm wondering, where is this plaintiff who's supposedly so dangerous? And as I call this case, he stands up. He's not my undercover officer or my angel or my caretaker. He's the plaintiff. I mean, he could have cut my body in a million pieces and stuffed me in the boiler room because no one else was around the courthouse in the morning. You could have shot a cannon off.
So what happened to the cop?
So we're halfway through this, and we're halfway through this matter, and he's the only one there, and I'm reasoning with him, saying, dude, do you think that mailing bullets to people with their name on is the way to handle your issues? And he's like, no, you're right. And I had him in the palm of my hand. Halfway through this trial, these 3 police officers walk in their flak jackets and sit in the back. And now I'm concerned they're going to set this guy off. So I politely asked them to leave, that I didn't need them. They just sat there and stared at me. So in the end, I had this gentleman admit that his claim was frivolous and that he was going to do better and go back on his meds. And I think I changed his life without any protection whatsoever. But the whole thing was really, really silly. Kind of a tempest in a teapot, and it turned out to be okay. But so thanks for that protection, that court system. Anyway, I got a couple stories like that. But it was things like that I just thought were really odd.
Yeah. Amazing. So today your profession today is completely different. You're a personal coach, motivational speaker, and you teach something called Heart Math. How did that transition happen? Like, you've told us about you decided that, full-time litigator was not what you wanted to do, especially with small children. But there was a transition, and at some point you became a personal coach and so on. Tell us about how that happened.
Talk about being that cruise ship that, doesn't turn on a dime. It all happened very slowly. And so while I was home working, I was, full-time mom and then a part-time judge, but being home most of the time. I had the time to heal and rest and learn things. And I began I began learning things. Yeah, things just come to you. You know this as well as I. One book, one workshop, one practitioner at a time. I feel like my life just unfolded as time went on. So what happened was, usually through my kids, we're a pretty powerful triumvirate, Alex and Scott and I, and so they dragged me into a lot of things. Their schools were often asking me to come in and speak to classrooms as a motivational speaker, which I just did every time, and I didn't charge anything. And when my son played soccer and hockey, I was asked to give the kids motivational talks, and so one of the times, a couple of the parents said to me, you're really good at this. You should do this. And I found that I was gaining some notoriety, and I was always doing it for free. Of course, I'm a supportive parent, and so I actually began in the fall of 2013. I put together my first business was and still is called the Mental Edge in Sports Performance. And I put together my program that I still teach, kind of a version of. I address needs of athletes as they come to me. And I began with a junior B hockey team, and I had a minor baseball team. I had all kinds of teams. And in fact, that was the bulk of my work in Kitchener, Cambridge, Ontario. I was also speaking to students in school, and by that time I had joined a really cool nonprofit organization called the Business and Education Partnership. And they were a nonprofit entity that joined the two school boards in the Waterloo region, and it was the separate and public school boards. And I was on a free speakers roster as the motivational speaker, and I bet I was in the classroom a dozen times a year at least, and I really loved my work, and people were asking me to come back time and time again, and I began, so the other story is about heart math, I'll tell you that in a minute, but I ended up getting really lucrative work through the school board teaching resilience to students because they changed their education document to recognize that resilience in students was really, really important, and kudos to them. I nearly fell off my chair when I read their document. It was very insightful and sensitive to the future of our young people, and so that's what I was doing before I left. I was coaching athletes, mostly teams, some individual athletes, and doing work in the schools teaching and training resilience. So I started training athletes in 2014, and towards the end of that year, I started noticing I was getting emails from the Heart Math Institute on my computer. I don't even know where they came from, and I always loved their content. And they started advertising their technology, the M-Wave 2 and the Inner Balance technology, designed to measure heart rate variability. And I wanted to know if, when I felt heart coherent, whether I actually was. And that's what these little machines do. So I bought one for myself, an M-Wave, for Christmas for 2014. I started to use it, and in fact, when I felt coherent, I in fact was coherent. And then I started getting invitations to become a heart math trainer in the beginning of 2015, actually. And it's funny, the first one I just dismissed because it was like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. What is that all about? Then the second one came, and I left it up. And I was I didn't even read the whole thing. This is how dumb I am sometimes. And I started thinking, I don't have the time for this. It's probably very expensive. They're going to try and control what I have to do. They're an American company. How do I get paid? Blah, blah, blah. I had all these stupid ideas. I left it up on my email list for a long time, and then I lost it somewhere. The third one came, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to look at this. And I loved it. I loved what they offered. I called immediately, and I loved Christiana Bishop, who was one of my trainers, and I signed up. And so I trained for Heart Math in July of 2015 in Boulder Creek, California. And I love their training program. Honestly, this company is changing the world. There's so many beautiful things I could say about it. So that's when I started practicing that. In the meantime, before all of that happened, I had started writing my book. So around 2010, I'd been in the schools for, 5, 6, 7 years by that time, and I had given a talk to a leadership class in high school, and the teacher critiqued me and said, Chris, you really should write a book. And so I did. The next day I started writing, and I wrote. That was in January of 2010, and I wrote until August of 2010, and I loved. I wasn't a writer. I never saw myself as a writer. I felt I was a writer, but I loved those times when I would lose hours. And I would just feel that flow of information through me. And I even said in my book, I didn't write this necessarily for anybody, although I did, just because I loved the process and I loved my book. And so I was doing that. It sat for a little bit because in 2010 my life kind of fell apart. I went through a divorce, and anybody we know who goes through that knows that you go into survival mode for a little bit, and I did, and I eventually got back to it. Started working with my daughter. We polished every word in what I had written, and then 2015 was a very pivotal year for me. Not only because I trained with HeartMath and I was able to bring those tools to everything that I've ever done, but I met my publisher in April of that year, loved her immediately, and I found her name through a woman I played hockey with in a tournament, and it's just weird. When the weird things happen, they're really meant to, and I ended up launching my book in November 26th of 2015, so it was a big, as I say, pivotal year for me, and that's when I really started everything that I'm doing.
Just to jump back a bit, would you say that your way of thinking and your personality is very different today than it was when you were a hardcore litigator arguing in the court system on a daily basis compared to who you are today? Like, what's different about you today?
Wow, that's a pretty in-depth question, but a really good one. All you'd have to do is ask my kids. And they don't pull any punches when it comes to their mom. I am a very different person than I was back then, and I would have to be to do the work that I do. I was back then, more emotionally dysfunctional. I'm not saying I'm not emotionally dysfunctional now, but I was also very controlling, very regimented, very rigid, very hard and fast in my thinking. I'm still hard on me, but I was harder on myself back then, and as a result, I was harder on everyone around me. I was stressed. I was stressed to the max, Luke, honestly. I felt some days like I was going to die. I just couldn't do what I had to do. And of course, your children, needing so much from you at that time, I had nothing to give them except impatience and frustration and anger. And if I could do my life over, that is definitely something that I would do over.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. I know what it's like coming home stressed and exhausted from a very tough day at work. It's tough. Tell us a little bit about HeartMath. Tell us, what is that? You touched on it. And does it connect to the concept of resilience? And I think resilience is, for me, it means the ability to bounce back. So athletes and students, we face obstacles and things come at us. And to me, resilience is the ability to just keep moving forward despite what comes at you. Is that how you would define resilience?
I've worked on my belief systems and, recognized my thinking and my emotional development was not what it should be. And as you learn things about yourself, it really propels you in a different direction to learn more and uncover more. And uncover more. There's a saying that this life isn't a journey outward necessarily. It's a journey inward. And the more we recognize about ourselves and our power and all of that, we inevitably change. And I believe we do become someone better. And I feel like I am a better person today. And one of the pivotal things, one of them, I do so many things to become better. HeartMath is definitely a practice that I can recommend, and I do coach because I believe with every fiber of my being that it works, and that is it is grounded in this resilience piece. The overarching theory is that you will change your heart rhythms. Your stress sits in your body, in your central nervous system, and your heart has everything to do with that. And I believe that when you change your physiology, you actually ground these belief systems and this energy work into your very being, and then you change. Because honestly, let's face it, when you can go hear a talk and be really excited and inspired, you can read a book, do any of those things that entertain you, but until you create a habit, you don't change. So you've just bought some very expensive entertainment. Until you create new habits and actually do things differently in your life really doesn't change. So if you want your life to change, you have to change your life. And this is what HeartMath promotes. The idea being that we create our own stress. And that is understanding that we are steeped in ideas about right or wrong, good or bad, from the time we were in utero. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. And so we habitually and naturally react to the things that happen in our life in certain ways according to what our family dictates were. So whatever family or influential people we grew up with, they have greatly influenced how we behave, what we think, how we feel, what we say, and what we do. And so we have to understand, first of all, that because of the subconscious programming, these aren't our ideas. And so if we want to be better, we have to understand that we have to stop reacting in these knee-jerk trigger reactionary modes that send us in this emotional cascade of whatever, whether it's anger or depression or whatever. And I'm not naming those as bad. They exist, and every emotion has something to teach us. But everybody knows we don't want to stay like that. It's not good for our systems. When we're in a distressed state, we're harming our bodies. And one of the worst things is we have a cascade of cortisol that is ruining our organs and even our DNA. So it's a matter of really understanding where our stress comes from, doing something about it, and changing the practice. So what heart math talks about with respect to resilience is it's not just about adapting to your situation, staying strong and getting through it, although that's a good part of it. It's not just about bouncing back, although we need to. This is about preparing for our stress. And it's the preparation piece that we need to understand that will actually change our heart rhythms. So it's through a system of mindfulness, which is important, breath, which is important, and all of that is part of yoga. Those are the important pieces of yoga. And it's that practice. Do you know that when you breathe, you actually engage your parasympathetic side of your nervous system, and that's what calms everything down. It brings your heart rate back down, your blood pressure, all of your fluids back into your organs, and that's what physiologically calms your system. The mindfulness is when we clear our minds of resistant thought, we also take down that stress mode. But the big part of the heart math piece is understanding how powerful the heart is. And it's learning to generate renewing emotion and more of it, because we drain unnecessarily through our emotional domain. We do every day. And especially people who have to go to work. I mean, we work in sometimes very toxic places with other people. And when we can learn to be resilient, that kind of stuff doesn't really bother us anymore. And that's what I found. I have kind of a Teflon personality now. I don't even see that crap, or it doesn't come to me. And we have to understand that how we tune the instrument that is ourselves, that electromagnetic being that emits an energy. And we can't deny that we all emit an energy, because it's what we feel about one another all day long. And this isn't a woo-woo concept. This is absolutely measurable, electrically and magnetically. People feel us before they know us. Yeah. You know, people think it's all in the head, that we're perceiving things through our eyes and our brain, and that's some of it. But most of it is our heart. We feel each other and know each other even before. We're awash in other people's heart fields. And our heart fields actually extend anywhere from 3+ feet beyond us.
It may sound like a bit of a tangent, but when I was running the bar and restaurant business, I all of a sudden stopped enjoying going to bars. So I loved going to bars, and my theory was I've been on this side of the bar for 25 years. I mean, how hard can it be to be on the other side? But what I didn't realize till it was too late was that if I go to a bar and the vibe is bad, you know, there's a tense energy or an angry energy, and a lot of people, you know, bring relationship problems to the bar and stuff like that. So you might go 8 times out of 10 and it's a great time. But, you know, sometimes it's a little off. The bartender's having a bad day or something. So as a customer, you just get up and leave, right? But as a bar owner, actually, you're more involved when things are bad. You know, they'll call you out of bed. You know, you're at home in bed and your children are asleep and you've got to come in because there's a problem. So it's the exact opposite. But you taught me that the frequency and the energy is not just something we need to work on to make ourselves feel better and feel calmer, but that we're actually projecting that out into the world. And it's really obvious. Like, you just walk into a room and you can feel this is a really happy place, or this is a difficult place, or there's something really bad going on here. We all have that intuitive sense. Tell us a little bit about how being able to, I don't know if control is the right word, but being able to get a handle on our own internal frequency affects the environment that we're walking into. So, you know, whether it's sales or whether it's motivational speaking or whatever, or raising children, we're transmitting an energy which has a big effect on what's getting reflected back to us and the effect we're having on other people.
So many things to say there, Luke. Thank you. We have to remember that 100% of the time we get what we give. So whatever goes off from us, whether it's words, feelings, thoughts, or behavior, comes back to us in some way. And for those who think it's not true, I beg you to watch. Just pay attention to what you think, feel, say, and do, and just see what comes back, what form it comes back to you in, because it will, 100% of the time. Not necessarily in the same kind, but the same essence. So the idea here being that the more coherent a field that you can create, not only within your body, but within your heart field around you, is what is going to attract. And the law of attraction, even for those who don't believe it, again, just watch. The law of attraction says that that is which is like itself is attracted to. So whatever you're putting out, you're going to get back in the essence of. So here's how I could make that clear, because I think I just muddied that for everybody. But when you are calm, you have composure, you're in a very clear, powerful state. That's the state you want to be in order to create the good things in your life and bring the things that you want more of into your sphere of influence. There's a lot to talk about there in terms of our creative abilities, but I definitely have seen in my life, and I'm a student of this, that we are powerful creators, and we create with our every thought, our every emotion, the predominant effect of those. So what HeartMath does is it teaches us how to become what's called heart coherent. When we are in a stressed state, and unfortunately the World Health Organization has called stress the plague of the 21st century, and we know it's killing us. It's actually eating our telomeres, which are little finger-like things that dangle on the end of our DNA, our chromosomes. There's a study in 2014 that shows that. We really need to tend to this stress. We're steeped in it. We're conditioned in it from childhood, and it just seems to be getting worse. I mean, pay attention to the news. Ideas in society, conversations that people have. Listen to the way you speak. What do you talk about? I was challenged years ago to think about what I thought about. That was a new concept for me at the time. But I'll tell you, it was very revealing. I thought myself a pretty positive person. And I realized that a lot of what I thought about when I caught myself was what I didn't like, how bad I was feeling, who I didn't like, what I didn't want to be doing. And I was horrified, frankly. So this is really a matter of becoming a master. And this is controlling our thoughts, controlling our feelings. And HeartMath just brings that to a real reality by learning to conjure, we don't call it positive or good emotion, because all emotion is good. It has something to teach us. But to bring renewing emotion into our breath work and our mindfulness, to think about our heart. Because when we think about something, we activate it somehow. What's the saying? Where the attention goes, the energy flows. Right. And when we can practice this ahead of our day, for example, my practice in the morning is 15 minutes of HeartMath, and I use my M-Wave too. It's like a trainer. It's like that treadmill in your bedroom. You try to get your heart rate variability in the green field, meaning the highest, and you try to keep it there. So it's really a matter of training your heart to be that. And it's through breath, and it's through focus on the heart, and it's through focus on renewing emotion. That is the training. And you can I've moved from low to high the 4 years that I've been doing it. And it's made a huge difference in my life, which I feel that is really the signature of who Chris Patton is. You're right, Luke. There's a lot of people here who do this work, who are coaches and trainers and speakers. And there's room for everybody, because we all have our own signature flair to what we do, our own inner authenticity, or the way we do it. And what I like to think is that I bring a heart-coherent, centered field to my talks or the coaching work that I do, which makes opening up and being vulnerable and getting to the root of things easier. And it's in a more loving atmosphere than maybe otherwise would be.
I like what you said, the word you use, signature, because, people always used to ask me, what makes you different as a realtor? And I always felt like the question was framed like, what makes me better? And I don't like to talk in those terms. But I do realize that everybody's got a different personality, and everybody's got their strengths. We all have, I believe, clients that we love to work with that just kind of match us, that we can help and advise, but we're really comfortable and at home dealing with them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your ideal client?
I don't know if we talked about this, but you were one of my ideal clients. I look forward to our our sessions every time, and I felt like we did delve deep. And I always had, some people you're on an emotional and mental wavelength with, and some of it is clearer than others. And we all know this. We all know the people that we just resonate with, and it's because probably our heart fields are more in the same resonance or resonant tone. And so those people are my ideal clients. And the other thing I want to encourage is that, and I think I touched on it before, you have to do the work. This is the treadmill or the stair climber in your bedroom that ends up being a clothes dryer. If you want to be fit, you have to work at it. You either have to walk up knocks, or you have to go to the gym, or you have to play hockey or do something. It's not just going to happen because you want it to. If you want to become healthy and lose weight, you have to have really good nutrition in your life. And it's a lifelong practice. This isn't something that you do for a month and expect great results and that they're going to stick around. So it's the same thing here with being heart coherent and practicing and changing heart rhythms.
Is it fair to say that you love to work with people who are willing to go deep and to analyze these things and do the work, actually, the recommendations that you give them, they're willing to actually put in the time and the effort? That, I believe, is a real pleasure for you to work with someone like that.
That is my ideal client, is the person who is willing to take a look at him or herself and to be vulnerable and to talk about the things that are working and aren't working and where we can tweak. I firmly believe we're all whole and we're almost there. In terms of, and it's not up to anybody to judge where we are or how good or bad we are. That's not it. It's how good do you want to feel? How good do you want to feel? That's really it. Because when we feel good, good things happen. That's really it. And once we pay attention to that, that's really what happens. And so the ideal client is willing to be open to that, and then to do the work, to take on a practice, to do something, to learn and then take on some habit. Again, the habit has to be part of what you do if you're going to change anything in your life. So, and those are the people I love to work with, because there's a real, as I said, I've experienced this several times, but there's a real resonance. There's a really nice communication and tone to a relationship. And it's the same thing with friends or lovers or whoever. I mean, that's what you're trying to promote, is that open channel of communication, where it's safe and you trust the other person and you grow. That's the platform of your relationship, is you grow. And you talk about these things, not all the time. It's about fun. And really, as Abraham says, what if we're here to play? And really make our life efforts, whatever they are, about play and fun. This is not a hedonistic idea at all. This is more about couching how we approach our life and what we do in a really different way. And that is to feel good and help others feel good. Why else are we here? Are we really here to go through the mundane minutiae of our life? Not to denigrate what we do, but we're here to love. We're here to grow and learn. And it's only when we're open to these ideas and open to practicing and reading and learning. They say great leaders are great readers, that kind of thing. So it's the people who really have a committed attitude and an authentic approach to being better, whatever that is, that I like being around.
I can tell every time I talk to you and every time I hear you talking about what you do that you love what you do very much. Is it always smooth sailing all the time? Do you have any challenges? Have you experienced any setbacks in your path of being someone who helps others?
Yes, I have no problems, no setbacks. I have never had a bad day in my life. Oh my God, follow me around for a day. I don't know. There's so many things. I don't even know how to answer this. Of course there's setbacks. Of course there's setbacks, and I do stupid things and I say stupid things, and I'm like anybody. Yeah, has there been a real? No, I don't think. Well, one of the things is I don't spend a lot of time in regret. You know, if and you and I talked about this. Is do I look back on my law practice and that whole time in my life when I was stressed out of my mind and look at it with regret? I don't, because I had to learn. All of that happened, and I chose it. And we have to know that we choose things for our greatest learning, even if it's unconscious. Our higher self is always guiding us to do things that break us out of the old and change. Life is about change, and that's inevitable. And if you don't like it, you're going to sink. Right. So it's learning how to embrace that, right? It's how to embrace the change. And yes, of course, there's setbacks. And I have to say, business here is, I was kind of rudely shocked when I got here, because I'd worked with, the reason I say that is because I'd normally worked with athletes, teams, and then students. And I couldn't get a team or an athlete or a school to call me back. So it kind of threw me for a loop my first year here as I was looking around. I landed in Kelowna. I didn't know anybody. I had one friend who eventually moved back to Montreal, and after that I didn't know anybody. And so I knew I had to hit the ground running, which is when I joined the Chamber and met you. At our SLN group, and I joined Rotary, and from that, I have met 3 people who met 3 more people who met 3 more people, and I've really grown my network from that. And I suppose the lesson in that is you can't sit at home and expect your life to grow. You have to take that step, and that's part of the creative process. Is number one, know from the contrast what you do want, and sometimes you have to know what you don't want before you know what you do want. And then you have to kind of conceive a plan that makes sense for you, and then you have to take a step. And the move here was huge, and I felt like I was on this magic carpet ride or on this treadmill, and the whole time I was thinking, what the heck am I doing? And yet it's turned out to be really beautiful. I'm not sure exactly why I'm here. I have a purpose here for sure, and I love it, and I love everything I'm doing. Yeah. But some of the choices I've made, and I think we talked about this too, is I go by my gut. Everything I do is an inner urging to, and sometimes it's like, why are you doing that? And then I'll do it and realize after, that's why my higher self was telling me to do that. So no huge setbacks, but once you get into business, you realize that you really have to put one foot in front of the other. And just keep going, and just keep going, and just keep going, and trust and faith that the universe will not let us down, that the universe has our back and wants what we want. It's just we really have to get out of our own way then and do what makes us feel good. Go by the gut. I don't think too many people know this, but we have the neurons in our brains. They're the cells specific in our brains and our central nervous system designed to carry an electrical impulse. There are also those neurons in the ganglia of our heart and in our guts, in our upper guts, lots of them. So we actually do think with our hearts and our guts. So that thing about, going by your gut feeling, follow your gut, is absolutely true.
We touched on this before. I believe that we naturally attract the clients and the friends and the relationships that sort of mirror ourselves. And sometimes that's great, and sometimes it's not so great. You mentioned that negative situations kind of bounce off of you now. You hardly notice them.
When you look around at the events and people in your life, they're there to show you what your internal blueprint is doing and has done. And it's really that internal blueprint that dictates your whole life. What comes to you, who comes to you, what comes to you, and the timing of it. And again, no good or bad assigned to what shows up. What's great is awesome because you put it there, and so you pat yourself on the back. And what's a challenge to you is something you simply have to work on. And when you look at life like that, there's really no bad things that happen because it's all designed for our personal growth. I'd like to think that my interactions, whether I'm speaking to a large audience of 1,000 or more, and I'm working on my facilitation techniques for that, or whether I'm working with someone one-on-one, is I try to create that heart-coherent, centered lesson or conversation. And I intend, through the instrument of my being that I have been working on tuning, that's not to say I haven't got a lot of work to do, we all do, it never ends, it's never done, that people feel the essence of what I'm saying along with the plan of what I'm trying to accomplish. And I don't know if that's clear or not, but I want people to feel me more than hear me. Right. And I believe I've had many people come up to me after talks with various audiences here and say, you were talking right to my heart, or you see me, and I don't know how you do that, and I don't see people, but somehow I mirror what they need to hear or the love that they need to feel, and that's what I think I do best, or at least that's what I'm working on providing to people, and that might be a unique signature for me.
So you've told us a lot about what makes you successful, and I think it's resilience, following your path, and being willing to constantly learn, and a lot of work on your inner self, your inner state. You touched on your book, and I'm an aspiring author as well, so I'm wondering what advice you would give someone who wants to be a book author. We didn't talk a ton about your book, but you said that you were kind of in the zone and you just loved it and you would lose the hours. But let's say someone's on the fence about writing a book. Like, what would you tell them?
I do the best I can, and I usually get good results. So if that's success, oh, you know what? And I love what I do. That's a success. I really love doing what I'm doing, and I could do it all day long. I don't get tired. I really don't, because I'm in that whatever it is. I sync up. So the author thing, I don't know. God knows I never intended to be an author, and that was kind of a surprise for me. And it wasn't a burning desire. I had no idea how to do it. Although I have to say, as a litigator and a judge, I learned to speak. If I had to persuade judges and juries to a certain way of thinking, then I figured that I could. And that's when I started my speaking business, that's what I relied heavily on, the fact that I had honed that craft as far as the mental part of it went. And as a judge, I had to write judgments that made sense, that I didn't want to be overturned because that was embarrassing. So I was very careful how I wrote. One thing I have learned with all the blogging and the articles I write on Facebook, et cetera, all my social media, I'm actually enjoying it because I research and I have ideas and feelings about what I want to portray, and I write, and it's a really cool feeling. I do it twice a week, and I don't care if that's the rule. I just do it anyway. But I have to feel inspired to do it. And I have to say, inspiration for me has to be the leading part of before I speak, before I write, before I'm with anybody. I ask for that inspiration to come in some form or another because I want to give the highest good for my audience, my client, and me, and the world. And I ask for that to happen. And I know that I've spent, the people that say sit down and just write 1,200 words a day or whatever the rule is, I've done that and I throw it out. It's crap. And I'm not saying, just wait for the inspiration. Maybe it has to be stimulated by something. But I find when you ask for something from God or the universe or whoever you believe in, whatever the creative loving source is in the world, when you ask for direction and inspiration, it will come. So now the next thing is to be open to what comes. And it might be in the sign, a sign that you drive by while you're on the street, or a conversation that somebody has with you, or you read something, or it's something on TV, or you read a cereal box and just something twigs something and it starts to flow. Be aware that that's how you get messages for yourself, for whatever it is, whether you're writing or speaking or just what to say to your kid who's got an issue, something like that. Yep. Yeah, but I really feel I produce nothing good unless I'm inspired.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot one more time. Please name someone in Kelowna who you think is a fascinating person and you would like to see come on the show in the future.
I don't know if you've asked Shauna McRae to be on your show yet, but she is one of my dear friends here in Kelowna. Shauna has a vast amount of experience and expertise in banking, and she now runs Balance Financial. She gives people financial advice in a very smart but whole and loving way. She also runs the group that I belong to, and that's Balance Wellbeing. She, with every part of her being, provides a platform for people who are solopreneurs, entrepreneurs on our own. I mean, we often go around that circle. We ask ourselves the questions and we get the same answers and we don't really get anywhere. So when we can get together, voice our concerns, talk about our businesses, she gives us all a platform not only to develop a better sense of who we are and what we have to offer, but she gives us the opportunity to speak. and to get out in the community and to learn from one another. And there's all kinds of opportunities. She works very hard at that. I would love to hear what she had to say on your show, and I support her 2,000%. Yeah, I failed math. I think she's amazing and really believes in what she does, and I honor her for that for sure. And I love her too.
Shauna is amazing. She let me speak at one of the storytellers' nights about a year ago, I think. So that's a great recommendation. I would love to have her. Thank you very much. Chris, if someone is interested in talking to you about your services or finding out more about what you do, what is the easiest way for them to reach you?
If you're curious, go to my website. It's powerwithin.ca. And once you do that, or if you want to bypass that, you can email me at Chris, CHRIS, at powerwithin.ca, or call me and have a chat, 250-864-7299. I'd love to have a chat and just see where you are or answer your questions, or to just let's be friends if nothing else happens.
Thank you very much, Chris. I feel like I've learned something today, even though we've already spent a lot of time together, and we all got to know you a little better on a personal level. So I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for coming on the show, and hope to see you again real soon.
Luke, this has been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you for your interest. Thank you for this platform. Thanks for just chatting. We always have the best chats. And as I said before, what I love about you is that when you want to step out and do something, you do, and you get it done. You're fearless. You know so much, and you bring all of that to your job as a realtor and all the other things you do, and I'm very proud of you. So thanks for allowing us to talk today.